Welcome to the Microsoft Security Insights Podcast with your hosts, Franklin Grimberg and Edward Walton, where we discuss Microsoft 365 security and Azure security news and products. Recorded September 22nd, 2021. Good afternoon, Franklin.
Good afternoon, Edward. We're starting to record these at 5 o'clock now instead of 6 o'clock to let people know that it might be joining us in the future. Just better for our schedules, and it doesn't push up against your bedtime at 7 p.m.
Yeah, my bedtime is at 7 p.m. I actually been going to sleep later to sleep in a little bit later, right? I'm trying to adjust my schedule because a lot of things that was compelling me to get up, they're not there. I'm probably not going to start back into the SANS GAC certification thing until in October. Looks like it's on again, it's off again, that I'm going to get a voucher to be able to take the 508. So I'm going to wait till the end of October before I pull the trigger on whatever I'm going to do, right? That's generally when I get up really early to study before my day gets going. But it's just been a busy week. This has been a work week, right? Legitimate work, stuff done, actually put my hands on the keyboard, a bunch of stuff, some research, testing some stuff out, labbing out some stuff. So it was a good learning week for me from a very practical state and not theory. So what I've been getting a lot though, even though that's not my jam, a lot of S&C questions, security and compliance stuff. So this must be a huge thing over at Microsoft around their insider risk, the GRC. MCAS is making a huge resurgence of what it can do with this insider risk stuff and being able to do application control, because it is noisy, but it does have some super cool features because application.
So have you been messing with the insider risk policies and all that stuff?
It is massive, man. I just been reading. I'm like, this ain't something you just go turn on. This is an undertaking. This is like a framework, sort of like zero trust, right? It's not a thing. It is a mindset that you then apply technology to be able to realize what you're trying to achieve. Because if
I have no clue what it's trying to do. Can you explain to me? It's massive, but I don't know what the end game is. I don't, tell me, what is it?
So let's look at it a couple ways. Insider risk is assuming that someone who is doing nefarious things were previously trusted and validated. Now, there are two ways to become classified as an insider threat. One of them is whatever your security user or access context has been compromised by somebody else and they're impersonating. So they're doing bad stuff in your name, right? And that is something that seems rudimentary, but most often we see it happen when someone's had their credentials and or authentication process compromised and someone's acting in that and they're doing these things. That's what we're used to it doing. Someone gets access to your environment, hackers do their thing like on TV, or someone gets access to a security login context with the appropriate authentication methodology, and then they start doing things, right? And ransomware, data exfiltration. But what about the person who's pissed that you got to come back into the office? Or you're mad because the job is now mandating vaccinations? What about the person who's just bored and burnt out? What about the person who is been approached, because I think you and I talked about this last year, that the average cost that someone would sell their password and credentials for it, and because they don't have the technology acumen to understand, if you give someone this access, you don't get to take it back. You can't sell your access for 2 hours and all of a sudden you change your password. Anybody skilled enough to even get you to do that for monetary compensation is probably already put their persistence in place.
Can't you configure a PIM to do that so they only have access for an hour, then pull it?
Yes, but I'm
kidding.
But you're assuming they're access controls. You got PIM from Microsoft, CyberArk, a few others, right? But you're assuming that asset control methodologies operate in that manner. You and I both know we've gone through organizations that have had massive amounts of security spending and massive amounts of incorrect or useless spending that they have, or they don't have control, or they just don't do it.
Or they don't configure it properly.
One thing I've learned about security and compliance, especially when it comes to data governance, it's not easy, right? When you start talking about information protection, access borders, ethical separation, life cycle of documentations, classifications, risk levels. If I had to really dumb it down, how do I know that when I create a digital asset that I can control the use of that digital asset until such time it can be verifiably destroyed? And in this day and time, nobody's data is being destroyed. I hope all of our listeners are either watching or listening, shaking their head up and down. When you delete data, especially if it's ever transversed the internet, delete means you don't have access to it anymore. That's it. That's why you have to go request to be forgotten all these places. But it's a massive undertaking because when you look at GRC and you start looking at data governance, we also want to look at it in a realm of the bad guy is external to the business, right? Nobody in the business would deliberately do something bad, but that is insider risk. Insider threat is when someone's confirmed to have been doing this, right? They're doing these things. So now you have to go into, well, what are some of the mechanisms you can do that? Well, you can go to zero trust. And zero trust is that I don't trust you until you can validate everything about you. That's the very first level of it, just in my architecture. The second thing is once I do give you this, how do I keep you from doing something deliberate or indeliberate? Because someone doing something because they didn't know any better still constitute insider risk. And it also sometimes it's just a wide range of things that can feed into the insider risk. The risk is you don't have the proper controls of access, governance, and data inspection that you can come back and either act on it or report on it or catch it. So Microsoft started playing with this years ago with their insider risk. So it's been about 2 years, right? I think if you are part of E5, you get it, but I think it's going to be a separate cost. So when you start playing with SNC, which is Brody's, guest of the show, friend of the show, that's his realm. How am I managing you so that if you don't do this, and that, you can't get in? So we've heard conditional access and everything else, but let's just get back down to the basics of insider risk and insider threat. Insider threat is synonymous with you've been identified. Insider risk is potential. You have the potential to do stuff. You are a threat when you have been verified, both deliberately or indeliberately, that you're doing something. Okay. Definitions are loose and they vary according to who you talk to. So within Microsoft, there is a compliance framework that ties to a series of offerings, and they are the insider risk. You can access it via the Microsoft 365 Security and Compliance portal. Not so much robust as it should be inside the unified portal, but that's okay because it's separate. And I've also gone to the docs.microsoft.com just to say, let me educate myself beyond just being able to say the words. When I tell you it's deep, and we're going to put it in the show notes, there are so many things you got to consider. Where the data is stored, how the data is being communicated, what sharing mechanism do you have? How do you control revisions? Just beyond a SharePoint person, right? How do you look at that someone's not trying to do man in the middle or circumvent the control that you have by trying to put it to USB and all these things? And so while the docs on docs.microsoft.com lay it out, it is very textbookish. It's very feature.
It's feature function.
Yeah.
It's function oriented versus
function oriented,
process oriented.
And so if you don't have anybody who has process, now if you're a company that has products that do these things and you're looking to do it, maybe to do it with the Microsoft series or two, maybe that transition is easier because you understand, you have the framework and you have what someone is trying to do. Okay. Problem with it is a lot of people don't. And here's the biggest thing everybody's always said about Microsoft, right? And to our listeners, I'm sorry, I'm not on Discord. It's still saying updating 14 or 14. So when it does, I'll be on Discord. So I was listening to a presentation today, and one of the coolest things came up. The CXE team at Microsoft, for those who don't know what CXE is, it stands for Customer Experience Engineering. They have a compliance one-stop shop. I did not know about this. And it's really cool. We'll put the link in the show notes. I highly recommend, even if this is not your thing, you need to look at this, especially if you enable for G5, E5, or A5, according to what verticals, right? This sort of gives you a layout of what the insider risk and compliance can be composed of. And I want to share my screen really quick. We're going to put it in the show notes, but I just want to show something.
All right, I make you a,
And to all our listeners out there, Red Cup Security, all day.
we'll make you the host there.
I am the hostess with the mostest. All right, let's take a look at this here. And to our users, I am getting better at Teams. Zoom. Did you know that? See, I
You got the
seamlessly
name
did that.
right. You got the name right, at least.
Yeah. So look at this. So it's in a GitHub. It's in a Git, not a GitHub. It's in a Git. And this theme lists out a collateral consolidation. This is actually good, even if you're experienced. But look at this stuff. Understanding what compliance is. Advanced audit, right? Look at this. Advanced e-discovery. Now, I'm no novice to this, but that's not my job. But there is a basic e-discovery and an advanced e-discovery. It's really based on your SKU, on what you're entitled for by virtue of M365, right? Communication compliance. This is, if I had to break this out into what product and what does it do in a product, it's like Teams. And inappropriate language being used in Teams and then using Synapse and be able to detect this stuff, right? Someone gets into Teams, I'm so tired of this damn job, I'm going to blow everybody up. These are type of the things that you can catch in there when you got the right controls and tool sets and features deployed correctly, right? Compliance manager is probably the thing that you and I have touched most out of all of this stuff, because there is a separate compliance manager portal that's new and classic, and it maps to frameworks and regulatory controls, HIPAA, PCI, CMMC for government entities, things along that line. And it's also part of the Service Trust portal. So if you are someone who needs to understand how Microsoft holds your data and what can they get access to without your permission, the Service Trust, right? And inside the Service Trust, those that have seen that have gone to the shared responsibility matrix, cloud versus on-premise, and who owns what. But check that out. Data loss prevention. So as I was talking to a customer, I said, data loss prevention takes many forms. And I asked, what does data loss prevention mean to you? That means that, data was leaked out of the communication medium that it should have been, and maybe to the inappropriate person. And I said, well, their data DLP comes in many forms. Your backups are data loss, and it's a DLP event if they're not encrypted. Because now you've exported this data into a format that's not protected. That's an auditor who wants to stump the chunk. I've seen them come with that. Your backups are not in a secure location. They're not encrypted. That's DLP. But yes, I get it. But DLP is not a product. DLP is a action and an adjective to describe something that you want to stop. Data, loss, oops, stop it, prevention. So that's what you get that from, right? I need to change the alarm on my phone. It's telling me that I got a podcast in 30 minutes. Maybe we'll do too. So if I continue this, look at insider risk management. This is the thing. This thing is an elephant that you're going to need many bites. Right? You ever heard the old term, the easy way to eat an elephant, is multiple bites. But when you go to insider risk, this is worth the read, even if that's not to understand what. Oh, oops, go back here. That's the video. I don't want the video. If you go to the, playbook guides and blogs, insider risk, interactive guide, so and so. But one of the things
why aren't we under the podcast here? What's the deal?
I don't understand what you're saying.
See on the screen, it says podcast. There's uncovering hidden risks. There's no Microsoft Security Insights podcast down there in the list.
Well, we'll figure it out. I don't know. I don't know who. Well, that's a good point, because I can contact the people over at CXC to figure out who owns this, and say, hey man, give us a plug, put it here. I don't know. Uncovered hidden risk. I don't know who that is. We'll check them out. Leave them bad reviews. But the insider risk blog, out of all these things, is probably the best, because now you get to see people come back and ask these questions that once the stuff is deployed, what do I do with it? But the insider risk interactive guide, check that out. It talks you through. This was really never extrapolated out of docs. You could figure this out if you went to the Microsoft Docs and made your own test list. They've curated this for you. This is excellent. I wish there was more stuff. People have been asking this for MDE for years. This doesn't exist. They got these rapid deployment guys. They got PFEs. They come in this. But if you're a user and you got to say, hey, man, I got to have device management. I got to have XDR. I got to do all these things. And now I got to go all these places. Because most people believe if you deploy MDE, that is your EPP. It's not. Defender is your EPP, right? And that's Intune / System Center Configuration Manager and a co-hosted. And that's MIM, right? Intune gone, Microsoft Endpoint Management. You can see how convoluted it is. But if you can take that convolution and it can be bearable if you can just put this in something I can go check a box. Yeah. Doesn't it, even if you're just labbing it out in a test subscription before you fully deploy it, it's fine, which is the benefit of a cloud SaaS PaaS service, right? I can go in, spend, what's the going rate for an E5 license? $700 a year. Get a domain name that I own, and you can do this stuff, and you have almost zero CapEx. You only have OpEx. Now, I can't say it's completely no CapEx, right? And just operational costs, because I don't know if you got to go buy anything else in. I'm going to go through it. But look at the activities, and then they give you the ability to come in and test. If I put an insider risk that says you can't copy certain information to a USB drive, how do you test it other than live fire? There are a lot of situations where live fire is not the most proven course of action. One of them being live fire, right? But I like this here and being able to see it and start the guide, right?
So
this guy gets around. Yeah.
So in SC200, we do go into insider risk. I don't think that we have that interactive guide in there. There's a module on one of the learning paths for insider risk that goes into more detail here. But anywhere where you can get in, the nice thing about the interactive guides that you were just showing is that, like in the SC200 stuff over in M365 Defender, I utilize the interactive guides quite a bit because I want to make sure that people have access to be able to do the things that they need to do without having the licensing requirement and also having to set up all the data and make things happen. So anytime you can do one of the interactive guides, don't just run and click through it, actually read it and understand everything on the screen. Definitely insider risk is going across the board, obviously SC200, SC400, and other areas it's getting pushed through. The other thing on the insider risks and some of it is just not, some of it is people might not know things. So there's a thing called information barriers, right? So let's say, this finance department, it's not allowed to talk to that finance department because you're in a, trading company or whatever. So you don't want to deal with, insider trading stuff. So some organizations have to make sure that one department is not allowed to communicate with another department. So you have that sort of capability also that you can put in place to stop happening. There's many times that I've received documents being from the IT side where I had internal machine names or IP addresses, and the person that emailed it got in trouble. They contact me and say delete it, get rid of it, because that was not supposed to go out. Obviously those sort of mistakes happen. So in data loss prevention, if somebody sends me a document that maybe has an internal IP address, can that be encrypted so I can't read it because I don't have rights to it?
Yeah. And this is one of the things for those who are still not Microsoft fans to say, hey, yeah, Microsoft doing security. They're just so large, they claim to do everything. When properly implemented, Azure Information Protection and Microsoft Information Protection are powerful, where you can do, instead of me having to email you or call you, tell you to delete it, I can do it, whether it's in your inbox or whatever else, because that in-transit encryption allows me to do things like redact the document while you're looking at it, redact certain aspects of the document, Obviously, it's going to work super well with the Microsoft native documents, Word, Excel, and those applications, but they extended this capability over to Adobe products also, and into the mobile arena across Android and iOS. They're going to be a little bit more limited than Windows, right? Because just of the way it's made. And so, yes, what you're talking about is definitely one of those things. But think about it. You're relying now on the integrity and hopefully the recession of human curiosity for someone not to look in something. But if I do have things, I can put keywords, expressions, regex, and certain things that can be searched. So it can pick up patterns. Easy things are, social security numbers, credit card numbers. Those are well documented. I can write a regex expression for that. You can look for those type of things in KQL and a few other
But those
SQL.
sensitive info types are already out of the box for you in compliance.
Yes, sensitive info type and tags. The cool part about it is that within the Microsoft ecosystem included this. They went to unified labeling classification about 2 years ago, and they kept warning you, you can't use these individuals, you got to use this one. So now the products recognize it. What you do in AIP is recognizing M365 for Office by MCAS, by MDE. So now that classification and labeling is uniform, so that what I do in one product, that effort is not wasted on the other product. Okay? And there are some limited capabilities to transition from other DLP and document protection platforms such as McAfee. There is a migration path for these things, right? And then some of the Microsoft products can understand those and convert them and or acknowledge them, but you lose some of the enforcement capabilities because they're not enforced by Azure Information Protection and such like that.
So I have a question in the chat. So for this site, what job role department would it fit under? Security and or compliance, or both, or Brody?
So is one of the choices Brody, or is Brody asking
One of the
question?
choices is Brody.
Okay. So the answer would be is the compliance, right? And it's a Brody. That's his superpower, right? It is not a job I would want to do, right? Because it takes buy-in for those in charge of both the project and the budget to realize this is not easy, especially from ground zero. Because one of the hardest things you got to do if you take this, don't just go for insider risk, which is the activity around the things already in place. Think about the data and governance that you need, right? I've seen huge organizations just give up on this because the first thing you got to do is herd the cats. They don't even understand where the cats are. I got data in the cloud. I got data on premise. I got data in this country. I got data on individual devices. How do I put these so-called things? I'll tell you the industry that's really good at this though, and I've seen it in action. Pharmaceutical companies are brilliant at this because they have a lot of IP. And you don't want your IP walking out the door because guess what? That company got their vaccine out before yours, or their treatment out before yours. Or it allows someone who wants it to manipulate the data. It could affect your IPO. Pharmaceutical companies are very good about controlling access. It is easy to get fired in that industry by going somewhere you're not supposed to be, even though you didn't do it. You didn't do anything in it. You went to a file share. Grounds for termination. Why were you even looking? Healthcare has the potential to be really good, but they're really poor at it, except for some of the more technology forward-thinking things. But for the most part, number three, who definitely need this, but they don't know how to get their hands around it, is education, especially working from home. Data's all over the place. I can go in very few educational institutions, both college who have massive endowments and some school districts who don't have a lot of money and can't get the skill set. They don't know what they're doing.
So let me throw one in here for you. Law firms.
Law firms are self-inflicted because it's a dynamic thing and lawyers like to do what they want to do. and they like to use the tools. And oftentimes the tools and the processes are dictated by the client rather than the other way around. Okay. And lawyers, in my opinion, does not express the opinions of this podcast and everything else.
Just watching watching Edward get himself in trouble. That's okay. Go ahead. I enjoy it.
It is, they always think they're being watched. You know, when you do something wrong, you always think someone's caught you. You know, you always want any minute now. And because a lawyer, if you're not a permanent employee or a partner at a firm, it's generally just contractors. You're nothing more than the professionals that are outsourcing their services to someone, right? Unless you own your own firm. But you're right, they are notorious for this being a problem. They don't know how to get around this, because when you start dealing with client matters and you start dealing with this, you've been in law firms, it's still massively paper driven. And so when they try to convert it into digital stuff to make it easier, yes, you have some lawyers that are very technology savvy. For the most part, they aren't. They just aren't. And so I see this attitude of, my job is to do this, your job is to protect me from my dumb mistakes. How can you win? Right? You know, if I get hacked or this data gets leaked, that means that you didn't do your job. But if you cause too much friction, well, you made me late for this deposition, you get it. So there's no right answer. What I tell folks is to stop focusing on the technology and focus on, do you have an initiative that is being sanctioned and backed up by the stakeholders who have teeth to say, you will not use this. This is what you have to use to share documents. This is the process for check in and check out. One of the worst things that could have ever happened, in my opinion, once again, is BYOD. Because if you really want to control what is happening, you supply a company-sponsored device. In highly regulated industries, think of STIG, think of all these things, think of your smart card. You don't get to just use your laptop to do things, right? So this is a very important part of security program, right? You got to have an SNC, you got to have an SNC, you got to have a compliance lead that works with your security lead, right? But the problem is a lot of folks wear a lot of hats. So what do you do, right? I don't know the right answer to it, but I do know this. If you're going to use the Microsoft products, then you're going to use some of the things from security and compliance manager, insider risk, input. This is a good place to go look at it and then read the docs and understand, because you can test this out without having to have impact into a line of business, right? And if you look at, you know, and I'll still share my screen. If you look at Microsoft information governance, you know, this goes into what I was, when I played in that realm, auto apply retention labels, such like this, and all this other things. Because another thing that I, you know, am aware of, but luckily I happen not to be in this, the easiest way to get yourself into trouble is to delete something, especially something that is necessary for audit and things on that line, because it sort of implies you're rogue or you're trying to hide something. And a lot of places have these, you know, logging requirements and document destroying process, like banks and stuff. You got to keep things for 7 years, right? Obviously they keep it forever, but, you know, cost of storage is cheap, both on premise and in the cloud, right? So information governance is crazy. Multi-geographical based companies, this kills them. Because how you do business in California is not how you do business in South Carolina. It's not how you do business in New York. It's not how you do business overseas. And the subcategory of that is, if you're in a certain vertical that has these individual controls that vary by geographical regions, finance, you can find yourself in trouble, right? So you got to have these informational and data governance boundaries. And that's being compounded by people making the cloud adoption. Because a lot of times they take their bad habits from on premise, and all they do when they say lift and shift, they mean the bad habits too, right? And so understanding information governance. So on the screen that you see it says Microsoft. You can take Microsoft off. Just say information governance. this is still a very useful doc, as well as the docs that talk about this on docs.microsoft.com. Just download the PDF, do a F3, search for Microsoft, take it out, and you still got a great document to be able to give you a way to be able to go do this. The technology solution of choice is up to you. But this is the new threat. That's the old threat.
Yeah. So you can take a look at SC400 is the exam related to compliance. I just looked at the skills measured, and they actually don't have insider risk, which is interesting. That's only an SC200. I was actually surprised to see that. I think that MS500 has insider risk from an exam standpoint. But yeah, if you want to start digging deep into this, you can also do the SC400 Learn modules, and that will get you started. I was answering questions about about this the other day, and I'm like, yeah, the technology is pretty straightforward. It's just the process around it, everything you have to go through or whatever. That's when I walk into a situation of enterprise, moving to Azure, watching integrated applications, 10 applications from 10 departments that are integrated together. They're like, all right, let's move to Azure. I just shake my head because I'm like, this is never going to happen because of the politics and demands by everybody involved in the different departments. And it's not a technology thing. It's a people and process.
It's a people and process. I don't like CISOs that report to the CIO, right? And I don't like CIOs that try to act like they're CISOs. Right? And it's a truly cluster if you find your chief information security officer reporting to your CFO. You're talking about conflict of interest, right? Right. But I do believe that in this realm, this is a responsibility of the chief information officer. And for him to work with whoever that chief security officer is to protect the information that drives the line of business.
Isn't there like a chief privacy officer because of all the compliance and reporting requirements? Would it fall to them, do you think, or the chief information officer?
Well, maybe that's that chief protection officer, CPO, or if you GDPR, it's called a DPO, right?
Right.
Data protection officer. Then that makes sense for them to then talk and report to the CIO with influence from the CISO, right? And so if the CISO is existing, it should be. I think the chief information security officer is more important than the chief technology officer. Okay, I think that even if they should be equals, they should be in the room to do these things. The fallout from a security incident is greater than the fallout from a software upgrade that causes disruption of the business that you have to roll back because you're in control of the process. If you have a security incident, you lost control of the process, right? And that's the reason I believe that the separation of duties, that CISO should be in the boardroom and be equal to the chief information security officer. In my humble opinion, the chief information security officer that has a CISO is purposely done, and this has been done to hamstring that person. Control the budget. I control what you do, and I can control what you can implement because I always got this one card up my hand. What you're doing is causing a disruption to the business and a rub. Make it work.
So,
well, who's going to sign off on the risk?
We had a great guest, and I can't remember her name now, talking about risk management.
Oh, Ingrid Rodriguez.
Yeah, that is the podcast to go back and listen to.
Ingrid Rodriguez. She's at Microsoft. She is a security and compliance GBB. And when I tell you her experience is vast, but she understands process. I don't care about the technology. Here's the process and things you need to consider. But going back to your learning, so I'm an insider risk that I'm sharing. And if you guys are, if our listeners are not watching Twitch, but when you do get the recording, whatever, or the show notes, on the left-hand side, I'm down to insider risk management IR, right? But if you come to the left, you'll see that there's to the right, there's a learning path. So let's see what that learning path's like. Let's see if
Yeah.
Franklin had anything to do with this. So if I click on this learning path here, it takes me down. Wait a minute, hold on,
Go to the link at the
webinar.
bottom. Go to the link at the bottom.
No, there's learning path. So if I go to the learning path, well, there it is. 3 hours, 43 minutes, learning path, 5 modules. Manage insider risk in Microsoft 365.
Can you scroll down here? I want to see. So part of what's in the SC200 was taken from here. I don't know if this has been updated or not. But this is definitely stuff from like MS500 also that you would need to have. So I'd be interested to see if they've updated this in the past. But yeah, that's good to have. All right, you had 2 things to talk about. What was the second thing?
All right, so I beat the thing up on insider risk and everything else. Number 2 is that what was my number 2 here? I had something else I want to talk about today. See, now that you asked me about it, you're making me. Oh yeah, I know.
10 things you wanted to talk about today.
I know. So I got a question about something, and we love the impact, the input from our users that go back and listen to this. Please leave us a chat. If I'm deploying MDE and I have attack surface reduction turned on and all the other good things you say do, right, based on security policy, what is your opinionated stance on someone being able to run a PowerShell command on their machine locally? Should they not be able to run PowerShell?
So should they be able to drop out of a Word document and run PowerShell? Absolutely not. Okay, so my problem with so that's the attack surface reduction rules that allows you to stop that from happening. Okay. From a user running PowerShell, this is why I think it's important for you to understand your users and what's normal for users. Like I definitely should be able to run PowerShell, right? But a regular administrative or regular, data entry person, should they be allowed to run PowerShell? I would say no, because the bottom line is that if you give an attacker like me access to PowerShell, I'm going to bypass everything and exploit the machine. If you give me access to PowerShell, it's game over for the machine.
And that's what I was trying to explain to the customer. And he made a, I got PowerShell, so that's fine. But look at what your title and what you do. Sir, you're the pen tester for the company. What are you asking? All right. Now, the policy that will apply to the machines that are being used by people outside of IT, no, I agree with. No, you don't need to do it. You don't need any type of process injections. You don't need applications impersonating and then running down and being able to run PowerShell and all. I agree with that. But there, what I was trying to avoid was an argument of what's right and wrong. Just say do what's right for the operational constraints and environment that you're in. That was just a question that I had. But today was really wanting to focus on this CXE GitHub around
We had a
insider
question:
risk.
is CXE the same as a PFE?
No. CXE does engage with customers, but therefore advanced scenarios that require a customer that has already purchased a product to come in and do some of these things. A PFE thinks of a consultant that go out, premier field engineer that come out and deploy some of these things like that. CXE, you ask these questions, I need to be very charitable. CXE individuals are generally more skilled than your PFEs, right? They are. So something that a PFE has done, a premier field engineer, if the customer has subsequent things and they're big enough, they have support and they have advanced scenarios and configurations, and need someone to get, direct access to the engineering group or the PG, your CXEs. Most of the CXEs are pretty good, right? That I know. Everyone that I've interacted is pretty good.
So now we have the new question. Everybody coming on will say, which one is technically more talented, the CXE or the PFE, to see what they say. That's our new question.
All right. If anybody wants to debate it, if you're a PFE, step up. You're a CXE, step up. Right?
Can you make me the host? I'm going to be answering a question once we end the show, and if you leave, then we will be kicked off the stream.
I
Because
do
you are
not
the
know how to
host.
give it back to you. Where's the screen that allows me to give it back to you?
Go to participants. If you click that at the bottom,
I don't have a participant at the bottom. Nothing's showing up.
or you stop sharing and then try.
I'm trying to stop sharing. The little green thing won't let me do anything. Hold on for a second. Golly, man. Let me see.
Yeah, we'll have to do more compliance. Hopefully get some more compliance in our Discord. People
Yeah.
talking about that.
I do not know how to stop sharing. Golly, this is embarrassing. Hold on for a second. Let me see.
All right, then you just have to stay on. Oh, I can press reclaim host. Okay, never mind.
Did you request it?
Yeah.
It's nothing's popping up for me. Let me make sure it's not popping up in the background.
No,
Okay.
I'm the host now. It's okay.
Okay.
All right, so
Can you stop sharing for me, please?
I don't think I can. I can do that too. Look at that.
See?
We've got a reverse shell on your machine, taking control. It's okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I know you just see too. I didn't give you a mission. You just took control back, right? Security hold Zoom.
All right. So listen, I'm going to stick around, answer a few questions post podcast, and we should have a guest next week.
Yeah. So to our folks, let me tell you what's going on. We had a lot of guests in the lineup. A lot of them are counseling, have to reschedule. I don't know what's going on in Microsoft, but folks are like, hey, still want to come on? I got to push. I got this going on. I got this going on. And you got to realize a lot of our guests are not necessarily geographically located in the United States or the Eastern Seaboard. So we got to be accommodating. We move days, we move times and stuff like that. But I did have, nobody counseled me and said they didn't want to come on and say, hey, I'm sorry to do this. I got to push. So I'm going to go back out and redo the schedule. Tell everybody if you can't, let me know and Franklin and Rod know. And that way, instead of us having to come up and, do the WB frog, hello, my baby, hello, my honey, we can have topics of discussion to be able to do this, right? I don't want to, hello, my baby.
Well, I have we need to have a roundtable at one point talking about how we got our first jobs in IT. That's one of the things that I want to do.
I have an excellent story.
Oh, I bet you my story will top your story.
We don't know.
We'll have to get people in chat and take a vote to see who has the best story, because there's no way you can top my story.
My story is the best story going.
All right. Well,
my story covers so many things about how the world got to take advantage and use Ed Walton, right? Otherwise, I'd have been lost in the ubiquity.
And if any of our listeners want to join in and want to compete in this best story of getting into IT, please email us and let us know. Come to the Discord, and then we'll have you on to put your story in the mix. All right, Edward.
One thing I want to do also, we got 1 minute left. I'm putting together a matrix, and I want to see MDE, Sysmon, Cisco AMP. Somebody asked me about that. And why? Because someone's said, hey, I got to figure out something here. What am I going to do? I'd
like to do the Sysmon debate. That should be fun.
The Sysmon debate, right? So I'd love to find somebody who's still running Sysmon for Mark and see what I'd love to get them on. But to our listeners, you're going to get more guests on, so you don't have to listen to me and Frank. It's just that everybody that we generally bring on, everybody, they have a day job and we're doing the stuff in the evening, right? So it's at a courtesy. We'll have to adjust our schedules and we'll get it going, but we're still trying to line up some good stuff as we close out the year. Man, it'll be October here in a minute. And I got a birthday coming up. Frank, what are you going to get me for my birthday?
When's your birthday?
I'm not telling you on live Twitch.
It was worth a try.
At least say you're going to get me something. Hey, I'll be able to visit you next month.
Good. So, I'll tell you what, I do want to hear about your SC200 at some point, because you've been saying, I'm going to take that next Friday. I'm going to take that next Friday. I'm going to take, and you seem not to take it.
Then I haven't told you what happened?
No.
Okay. So I got all the renewals done. Right. Easy 25 questions. So when I went in to schedule it, it wouldn't let me schedule. And today it did. And I didn't because I was like, oh, let me make sure I got the time to be able to do it. But I can schedule exams. Oh, I know why I didn't do it. I know why I didn't do it. It asked me to pay and I couldn't use the Microsoft discount. That's why I
Okay.
didn't do it. So it's
Alright.
not linked again. And I'm reluctant, like, oh my God. If I do this, I'm not going to hit the end of this, right? So maybe a test run, you just pay out of your pocket, Ed, and see what happens. But hey, I'm back good. I'm going to handle it. So, hey, to our listeners, thanks for supporting us. We're getting better. I hope we bring interesting topics. We're going to sort of do the same thing that's our core, but we're going to also bring some new things on to see because this whole security thing is like, yes. And we haven't even touched one product because nobody really wants to own this. Who is in charge of email security? The collaboration group or the security group? Who owns MDO? Nobody wants to own it. MDO is the bastard child, just like SCCM. Nobody wants it. All right. We got to talk about
And
that. I have
MCAS.
no. MCAS is making a resurgence. Right. I'm telling you. You heard it
Alright,
here first. Right. All
alright,
right, man.
until next week.
Till next week.